morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, Babz.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey,
If y'all just tuned in, y'all tuned in to Criminal Justice Insider with Babz, Rawls-Ivy, and Jeff Grant. Good morning.
Sponsored by
The Community Foundation of Greater New Haven.
now more than ever.
Yes.
Hey.
How are you?
Babz, so good to see you.
It's nice to be seen and not viewed. How are you? Can I just tell you, I love the Rick Roll piece.
Oh, really?
That was so fabulous.
Oh, yeah. I don't have any sound coming out of my headphones.
Oh. Okay. But you should be.
Oh, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
So, oh yeah, you like that? Wasn't that great?
Yeah, it was nice. I liked it.
Yeah,
I loved the way it looked. I loved the way it sounded.
Yeah, Rich. We taped it about 3 months ago when I was out in California, and yeah, it came out great. I thought.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it.
Yeah,
I liked it. So,
and anyone who wants to see it, it's at richroll.com, and Rich has like hundreds of thousands of followers, so you can't even imagine how much inquiry I've gotten and people reaching out. So that's lovely.
That's good.
Yeah, lovely.
So today on Criminal Justice Insider, we're going to be talking to Tara Simmons. She's a returning citizen who was admitted to the Washington State Bar after a landmark court decision. So she will be calling in. We'll be having a conversation about her story.
Yeah,
and what it means to. I mean, she's. I've only known of Reginald Betts here.
Yeah.
Who graduated from Yale and had to fight his way to get to take the bar and to get accepted to the bar. So here she is.
Yep, similar.
Similar story.
Yep.
So I guess this is more common than we know.
I don't know how common it is yet, but certainly there are a lot of people with felonies who are trying to get into law school and trying to get admitted to the bar, and she's got an amazing story.
I can't wait to hear it.
Amazing.
Because when we talk about second chances, if people want opportunity to change their lives, this is one of the ways to do it. It shouldn't be a barrier. So I believe this might be. Is this her now, Harry? Okay. Good morning, Miss Tara Simmons. How are you?
Good morning, and it's Tara. Just so you know.
Okay, Tara.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes.
Thank you for being our
Good
guest
morning.
this morning.
Hey, Tara.
Yeah. Yes. Hello.
Hey.
This is one of the ways to do it. It shouldn't be a barrier. So I believe this might be. Is this her now, Harry? Okay, Harry. So we got her. We got the blowback in. How do we? Okay. Let's go. Technical difficulties on a Friday. Woohoo!
We're doing okay. So Tara, you can hear us, right?
Are you there?
Yeah, Tara.
Yes.
Tara, you can hear us, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right.
Okay,
Perfect.
good.
Perfect. So Tara and I have not met in person, but we are online buddies, and I have followed Tara's story very, very closely. It's an amazing story of resilience, and Tara, what we're hoping is you could take us from the beginning of where you were and how you got into trouble, and where your life was before this part of your journey that's so incredible.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on the show today. I I'm formerly incarcerated and now an attorney, but the road has been very long and full of twists and turns. My backstory is that I was born into a family where everybody has been incarcerated. Everybody has suffered with substance use disorder. My parents divorced when I was a year old, and my mom lived in Washington. My father lived in California, so I went back and forth a lot growing up. I was specifically in California. My father was addicted to crack cocaine, and I was exposed to violence and trauma at a very early age. We lived in a neighborhood where I was the only white girl in the neighborhood, and people were selling crack off our front porch because my father was addicted to crack, and people were being shot on the corner of my street. And so that was, ages 11, 12, 13 when I lived in California with my father, and it was a really hard time, and grew up in poverty. I remember my first time breaking the law was stealing food just to eat. And then I came back to live with my mom in Washington when I was 13, and she was and still is an alcoholic, and I, had no parental supervision and ended up running away. I got kicked out of school, expelled from school for bringing alcohol to school, and so I just ran away. I never lived with a parent from the age of 13. I became homeless and was a runaway youth, and in those circumstances ended up being kidnapped and trafficked. And when I was 14 years old, I was really, really sick, and so I went to the emergency room and found out I was pregnant. And so here I am, 14 years old, pregnant, homeless, and for most people that would be, a tragedy. For me, now today I feel like that's the biggest blessing I ever got, because when I went to the hospital, I was admitted for a few days. I was really, really sick. And it was the first time I received any kind of social services. And a social worker came and, told me I could get on welfare. And so at, 15 years old, I signed my first lease of my first apartment, and it was, a $300 a month studio, and it had cockroaches, but it was the first time in my life I ever had any kind of safety and had a door, and so when I had my son at 15, Child Protection Services came to my bedside and said, we are going to take your child unless you agree to do, a list of conditions. And one of them was to go back to school. And I didn't have any high school credits. Sorry. But because they insisted I go back to school in order to keep my child, I went back to school, and I did all 4 years of high school in 1 year.
Wow.
Went to the regular I went to the regular high school during the day and went to the alternative at night, and got all 4 years of high school done in 1 year, and graduated at 16. And then a neighbor told me about Pell Grants and financial aid and how I could supplement my welfare check if I went to school, and I'd have a little extra money left over to buy my kids some shoes. And that was kind of the motivation for me. I never ever dreamed of going to college. I was the first person in my family to ever even graduate high school. Neither of my parents, and so I was incentivized to go to college initially because I thought I could get a little extra money, and I had no clue what I wanted to do. But through people at the college kind of advising me and giving me some support, I decided I wanted to be a registered nurse. So by the time I was 21 years old, I had graduated from that community college and went to a university and had a bachelor's degree, and I became an RN by the time I was 21.
Wow.
And also bought a house, and nobody in my family had ever bought a house. So I thought I was doing pretty well. I thought I kind of escaped, what the cards were dealt to me. However, I never really dealt with all the childhood trauma, and so I found myself in cycles of dysfunctional relationships. Didn't really have much self-worth. I, eventually became addicted to drugs also after experiencing some more traumatic events. And addiction will ruin your life. And I never thought I was like my parents because I hadn't done that drug, or I hadn't shot up, or I hadn't, and it was really hard to find myself in prison at 33 years old, and realize that I am an addict. And it was the first time I ever was exposed to 12-step programs.
Yeah.
So, being in prison was really hard. I went to prison for several felonies related to my addiction, theft, and delivery. But it was, although I don't wish prison on anybody, and I think we need different responses to root causes of crime. It was a time for me where I finally got to draw closer to my faith, and kind of do some healing work, and realized all of the things that happened to me in my youth were not my fault, and I didn't need to carry that shame anymore.
So Tara, how
And
long
so
did you
I did.
serve?
Yeah,
How much time did you serve, and was it
I
all
served.
drug charges, drug related kinds of things?
Yeah, I served 2 years. It was delivery, unlawful possession of a firearm, organized retail theft, and then a couple other possessions. And I did have a violent offense in my past too, and had served 9 months in county jail for that. But yeah, so that was in 2011 when I went to prison. And during my time there, some law students came because you're convicted of a criminal offense. You have a lot of civil issues that follow. For example, my house went into foreclosure. My ex-husband was filing for custody of my children. I had was losing my RN license. There was a lot of other collateral consequences,
Mm-hmm.
and there was law students that came to the prison, and I asked them at that time, I said, I'm an RN. I don't think I'll ever be able to have a job as a nurse again. What do you think, I can do? And I said, do you think I could go to law school? And one of them said, I don't know if you can with your record, but I know somebody to call. And so I wrote the name down in my journal and just kept it there for a couple of years. And his name was Professor John Strait, and he's a professor at Yale University who helps people with backgrounds become lawyers. And
Oh,
so I got out of prison.
Tara, what's his name?
Oh, John Strait.
John Strait, and he's where?
At Yale University.
Did you get that?
Yeah, he's a professor. He's been representing people for 30 years on character and fitness issues.
Mm-hmm.
so when did you know you when did you know you wanted to be like, what was the moment that said, I want to go into, because you could have said anything. Like, you could have said, I'll go be something else. But what was it about being an attorney that sort of attracted you?
Yeah. Well, I think I had always kind of been called to, fight for justice. I have two sons who are African American, and I've always been pulled into, racial justice advocacy and school advocacy. I've always kind of been called to that. I just didn't know it was possible, and I didn't know the first thing. I didn't know a lawyer. I never knew a lawyer outside my public defenders. So I think, when I was in prison and meeting those lawyers, I finally had access to talk to somebody about what it's like to be a lawyer, and what's the process to become a lawyer, and what is law school like, and what is, the admission process like, and then, when I'm in prison and I'm realizing that all of us are sitting here and the injustice that I'm seeing around me, that called me to it too. And then, when I was released and I was in recovery and I was going to recovery meetings and realizing that all of my friends were also really good people but couldn't get jobs because of our criminal records, I felt like somebody has to do something about this. And I thought I would just go to law school and figure it out. and that's kind of the path I've been on. So, it's been really hard.
Tara, when you
got out of prison, and, all I could do was find a job at a fast food restaurant, making minimum wage, and they're garnishing my paycheck to pay off my court fines and fees. My house went into foreclosure, and I got to keep my RN license, but it was in those peer support groups I went to keep my RN license. I met a nurse who told me about the book Lawman by Sean Hopwood. And I read that book, and I went and rented it at the library. And at that time, my friend Sean Hopwood, who is now a professor at Georgetown Law School, he was a student at the University of Washington in Seattle, where I live. And I read his book, and I found him on Facebook, and I said, I think I want to be a lawyer too. And I said, do you think it's possible? And he said, come meet with me. And I went and saw him over at the University of Washington, and he said, I think you can do this too. And at that time, he wasn't even admitted to the Washington State Bar Association. But he helped me prepare my personal essay and admission materials, and mentored me. And, and then a few years later, he had to fight for my right to become an attorney in the Washington State Supreme Court.
Wow. So it went all the way to the Supreme
yeah.
Court.
What's that?
It went all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yes. Yeah, so the bar admission process, I got admitted to law school a little over a year after I was released from prison. And in law school, I did everything you think you would need to do to become an attorney, to show your character, to show that you are remorseful for your past and that you have truly rehabilitated and redeemed yourself. And I kept up with my nursing license, the terms to keep my RN license, which required, mandatory drug tests, random. So every single day I would check in, and if it was my day, I would go and get tested. So I had over 100 of random, drug tests to prove that I was in recovery. I was, part of my faith community and part of my recovery community, and excelled academically, graduated with high honors. I had been appointed by the governor to 2 state boards. I had done 5 public interest internships and externships. I had over 100 letters of support from people who vouched for my current character when I applied for the Bar Association, and I was completely devastated when on Good Friday in 2017, the Bar Association, after a 4-hour hearing, said that I did not have the character and fitness necessary to practice law.
But
it was a split decision.
Tara, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So, but Tara, you got accepted to law school. Wasn't there a conversation with the admission officer at law school or anyone there that, like, we'll admit you, but we have no idea whether or not you could ever get admitted to the bar?
Yeah, I mean, I knew it was a risk when I decided to go to law school. However, for 30 years, really felt like I had a good chance because most of my criminal conduct is related to childhood trauma and substance use disorder, and I was addressing both of those things. He felt that if I did well in law school and got into positions of trust, which, I took a oath of public office to serve on these boards appointed by the governor, and I had done, 5 internships. I had garnered some positions of trust, and he felt like if I really did all of those things, that I had a really good chance. And the day of my hearing, he said, "I've never ever seen a record of rehabilitation like yours, Tara." I literally had over 100 letters from Court of Appeals judges sitting. I had a sitting Superior Court judge come and testify on my behalf at the hearing. Elected officials, legislators. I had done all kinds of advocacy at that point. I graduated near the top of my class. So academically, I was fit, and it was just based on my past criminal conduct. And the other thing is, I received the first Skadden Fellowship for my law school in history, and the Skadden, fellowship is a really sought after, prestigious fellowship that I was the only second person in Washington State to ever receive it. It's been around for 30 years. It's a fellowship that pays your salary for 2 years after you graduate from law school to allow you to serve the public, do public interest law. And my project was all about removing barriers to reentry for other people. And so the bar, kind of looked at that in a negative light, and they thought that I felt entitled to become an attorney because I had done so many things. And so it was really a painful time to feel so misunderstood after you worked so hard. And part of it is I thought that's what people wanted. I thought people wanted me to work hard. I thought that by doing that, I could show them that I can do this. I'm capable, and I have a passion for it. And then I'm going to protect it against everything. I will never, reoffend, relapse, because I've built a life that I want to keep. And I thought if I showed them all of those things, they would allow me to become an attorney. So, I think things are meant to happen in some ways. It was Good Friday, and I'm a person of faith, and I thought, Jesus died on Good Friday, um, and I felt like I died in a lot of ways when they said no.
So when
It
did
was
they say
absolutely
yes?
devastating
What
because
was
nobody
the
saw it coming.
what was the fight like afterwards? Like when did you gear up to sort of get back in and fight again? Like talk a little bit about like when did the tides change in your favor?
Yeah, so it was pretty amazing actually. There was a few miracles along the way. The Washington State Supreme Court does not had not ever heard uh, a bar admission case in open court in history. There was no process for this.
Mm-hmm.
What we did was a brand new legal thing in Washington State. The last time the Washington State Supreme Court had ever even issued a written opinion regarding bar admission was in 1984. And that is when they upheld the decision to keep somebody out of the Bar Association.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very, very lucky that because of all of the work I had done in law school, I had developed a network of attorneys in Washington State. And, one of my internships I did was at the ACLU of Washington. And I had become friends with many people that work at the ACLU of Washington. And, it started, and in fact, one of the attorneys at the ACLU of Washington was one of my character witnesses at my character and fitness admission hearing that I was denied, and stayed until the end and was there to kind of pick up the pieces that night, along with my professor, John Strait, who represented me at that hearing that night. And so I think, we started the following Tuesday. This was on a Friday, and the following Tuesday, we had a strategy call with, judges and the Skadden Arps Foundation, called in to this meeting. It was hosted at the ACLU of Washington. Just a few brilliant legal minds joined. Sean Hopwood joined from Washington, D.C. And we started to think, there is an appeal process, but the Washington Supreme Court had never actually heard one of these hearings in open court. And part of that is because they're confidential, so I had to waive confidentiality.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted the light to shine on this. I wanted to break this barrier, not just for myself, but for other people. The only way around that was to waive confidentiality and allow the public to see this. And so we appealed. Sean Hopwood wrote the appellate brief. The Bar Association fought it every step of the way. The ACLU of Washington wrote an amicus brief where 49 organizations across the country signed on in support, and an additional 54 law professors and attorneys signed this amicus brief, and we filed it the same day we filed the appeal. And the Supreme Court accepted it, and they held an open hearing. And Sean Hopwood came from Washington, D.C. to represent me. And mind you, he had done 12 years in federal prison for armed bank robbery, and Washington State allowed him to become an attorney. He got through the Bar Association, and here they were, telling me that I couldn't become an attorney. And so
Tara,
a little bit strange to have him. Yes.
Tara, why did Sean, why was he acceptable to the Bar Association and not you? And what did you guys think the distinction was?
Well, there is the court did cite to gender in their Supreme Court opinion.
You said gender, like because you were a woman?
The problem, yeah, pretty much. They did cite to it in their opinion. They said there is absolutely no reason to distinguish between Sean Hopwood and Tara Simmons outside of their gender. So there is some concern that there was gender bias, and the Bar Association has hired an equity and inclusion specialist to provide training to this volunteer board that makes these decisions. The larger problem is that there is no objective standards. It's a very subjective decision. It's a board of volunteer attorneys who volunteer their time but do not have the right training.
Are there any women on this board, Tara? Is there any women on that board?
There are.
Okay.
There are. And so, I mean, it just depends. The composition of the board can depend month to month. And so that's the problem, is there's no standardized training or composition of the board or anything like that. And they make decisions based on their own subjective, experiences on whether they think somebody is rehabilitated or not. And so, yeah, it was pretty amazing how everybody came together to highlight this injustice. And Sean came from DC and he argued the case. It was a beautiful hearing. I'll never forget it. And on November 16th of 2017 was my hearing date. When we left the steps that day, we thought it's going to take about 4 or 5 months to get an opinion, which it did. The opinion didn't come until April. However, on that day, they issued a unanimous order and completely shocked all of us because we did not think we would hear anything for 4 to 5 months. And before the end of the day, they let us know that they unanimously decided that I should have the opportunity to become an attorney.
Oh,
so
awesome. That's pretty cool.
Slam dunk. Yes, it was something I will never, ever forget.
So now you're working as an attorney now. You're working as an attorney now?
Yes.
Okay. Because I know I'm looking at your bio and you've the governor Inslee appointed you to the statewide reentry council. You've come through the Just Leadership program, fellowship program. And so, I mean, so you're still doing these kinds of social justice work. Yes.
I mostly do legislative advocacy. And I am an attorney, and I do take some cases, not a lot, because I've been focused more on the systemic advocacy piece of the work, and have been building an organization that is led by and for formerly incarcerated people, doing organizing and leadership development and legislative advocacy. But we also have done some legal work. We've been organizing these days where people can come in off the street and get legal help, especially around their court fines and fees. And over the last month, we've helped 1,200 people. We've waived over $5 million.
So is this like a legal aid? Because here in New Haven, we have in Connecticut, we have a legal aid organization that does that kind of work around housing and jail and all that kind of stuff. So is that sort of like that, that you are creating this? Then this is your organization that you are growing and cultivating. Yes. So I work with my Staten Fellowship at the Public Defender Association, where we do the some of the legal aid for low-income people that have been justice system involved. And on the side, I've been creating my own nonprofit. However, I decided I really don't want to be an executive director. I really want to. None of us do, Tara. None of us do.
Been there, done that.
I'm very fortunate in that the Public Defender Association has agreed to allow us to incubate under them.
Oh, that's great.
And so we are in the middle of integrating my nonprofit, which does more of the organizing and leadership development for formerly incarcerated folks. That's coming under the Public Defender Association, so I don't have to kind of be an ED. I still want to do the work. And The place where I really love, I think I'm really drawn to, is legislative advocacy. I've been very grateful to have a team of people working on a variety of system reform bills, and we've been very successful the last few years. So, everywhere from ban the box for employment to reforming those court fines and fees and making them more manageable. And the biggest one last week was a bill that I wrote and shepherded through the legislature, and it's going to allow people a real second chance by vacating criminal records and including some more serious violent offenses that I think we are probably the most progressive in the country at this point.
Yeah, I want you to
that are considered strikes.
I want you to paint me a picture of what the social justice or the reentry climate is like in Washington State.
Yeah, I think it's fairly progressive. Really, I think when I go visit other states, read other people, I think we don't have a huge, I'll tell you, we don't have a huge social justice like advocacy movement yet in Washington State. It's a little bit different. You go to New York, there's all kinds of organizations doing advocacy work and led by formerly incarcerated people. That's not necessarily the climate in Washington. However, our government institutions, even the Department of Corrections, there's an article today about the Department of Corrections is partnering with Vera Institute to investigate their, housing restrictions in the prisons. They're trying to get away from any segregation. They're trying to get away from all kinds of things. The prison system here, I think, is more progressive itself. It's they have a reentry division. They're trying to ship organizations that do services. So I think, and it's still not enough. Don't get me wrong. I will critique it all day. It's not enough. It's not what I envision.
But I mean, I'm sure it's certainly better than Alabama or Mississippi.
Oh, for sure. Yes, it has to be better than Alabama and other places. But I think we've banned the box for employment. We are hopefully next year. Even the fact that our legislators are willing to introduce bills that are going to ban the box for housing applications, so no longer will landlords be able to ask about criminal history on rental applications, right? Our legislators are willing to introduce those kinds of measures. And I think our governor signed an executive order in 2016 when he proclaimed, Washington State Reentry Day, and essentially the Washington State doesn't ask criminal history anymore for job applications. They did that before the legislature, passed a bill around it. So I think our state is becoming a leader in reentry, and I know several people who work for the state of Washington that are formerly incarcerated or have conviction history in all kinds of different offices. We have a new Department of Corrections ombudsman office, which provides oversight of the prisons and conditions of confinement and access to medical care, and they have a staff of 5, and I would say 3 of them are formerly incarcerated. It is pretty amazing when I think about it compared to other states.
And how many people are incarcerated in? And do you know that number? The number of people who are incarcerated or in some form of probation, parole in the state of Washington?
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's 18,000 people in prison. Capturing the number of people in jail is a little bit more difficult to estimate. I think it's somewhere maybe around 50,000 people are in county jails. Actually, that's like how many people are admitted every year. So I know that the Department of Corrections prisons is 18,000. We don't have a huge number of people on probation. We don't have parole in Washington State.
Really?
Which is a problem, actually. Yeah. And we
Like,
think
so
it's a
if you go to
problem
jail,
because,
you serve your time and then you do your time and then you get out and you don't have no other commitment to the state?
yeah, some people have community custody, but it's reserved for really people with violent offenses or sex offenses.
Mm-hmm.
If if you're low or moderate risk and you go and you are convicted on a drug or property offense, you don't have any probation, and we call it community custody when you leave. Now, I think that's fine, but the problem is we don't have a parole. And so if you are sentenced to 60 years, you're doing 60 years.
Whoa.
And so we are actually fighting right now to bring parole back to Washington State because we find, youth, late
Well, yeah,
teens,
if
early
you're a kid
20s.
and you get sentenced to a long time, you grow up in prison, you
Mhm.
change. People change.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a fight worth having, I
there's
think.
Yeah, and there's no opportunity for a second review anymore because we don't have parole.
So
we don't have a
you get this
post-conviction review
sentence,
board.
you get this sentence and that's it. You can't have anybody entertain, okay, look, she or he has done 20 years in. Can we revisit this sentence, or can we look at, good time, good behavior, no problems, none of that?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Nope. The only process we have is clemency, which is very, very, very difficult to even get a hearing. They only meet 4 times a year. They take a few cases. You have to have extraordinary circumstances, and then the governor has to sign it. So that's the only process right now. And we think that after 15 years, everybody should, have hope that if they have good behavior and progress, that they could have an opportunity to be heard, to be released.
Wow.
So we're fighting. That's a bill that we were, excited about last year. It died. So gearing up again for next session to hopefully see that possible.
Yeah, but Tara, on the East Coast, we view Washington State, or at least the coast part of Washington State, the Seattle area, right, as super progressive, super wealthy, burgeoning with all kinds of tech. Some of the wealthiest people in the world that live there, from Jeff Bezos on. Why isn't there some form of business, law, clergy coalition coming together to try to change all this?
Well, I would say that we do have, a coalition that includes, there is clergy, Faith Action Network we work with, and not so much business leaders yet. We do have coalition and we do move bills. Like I said, I worked in a coalition this last session around vacating criminal records. So now even people convicted of some very serious violent offenses can vacate their criminal record and be relieved at some point. I think that is very important. If I'm working in reentry, and I see somebody who's committed, a robbery, and at 20 years old, and now at 40 they can't coach their son's t-ball game. I think, because of that conviction, I think, we needed a process. So I'm very happy. And in that coalition, I think what's great about Seattle is that because it is so progressive, we've been able to push even prosecutors. So in that coalition, prosecutors supported the bill I just led through session, and that got signed by the governor last week. And you would think, but for so long, criminal justice was not really an issue either side wants to take up. And while Seattle is progressive, when we're talking about state level reform, right, we've got the whole Eastern Washington, which is very conservative.
Yeah.
And then we have
good basketball, though.
Yeah. But, and then they're worried about elections, the state legislators, and they're worried if they, again, this year we didn't pass the death penalty repeal. Even though our Washington State Supreme Court has said the death penalty is unconstitutional, the legislature still did not pass that bill. And I'll tell you it's because, leadership is afraid that if Democrats, which we are a trifecta, we have all blue, House, Senate, and governor, but they're afraid that if we do too many progressive criminal justice bills, it's going to come back to bite us in elections, and we're going to lose the majority, right? And so there's been, fear from the Democrats, and then, Republicans historically tend to be, kind of tough on crime. However, the bill I just told you about around vacating criminal records, we did get it through unanimously in bipartisan support. So I'm really trying to cultivate, not just go with like progressive, Seattle is progressive, it's wealthy. Yes, Seattle is, but that's one city in the state. And if we want to move things through the state legislature, we have to be more inclusive of all people, including Republicans. And so trying to build from that bipartisan effort we had this year around vacating and bring partners around to engage and learn more around criminal justice reform.
So Tar,
we're what I'm working on right now.
Tar, we only have maybe 10 minutes left. I want to make sure that we talk about some things in your future. Tell us about the TV show.
Oh, my TV show. I sold my life rights to NBC, and they were, creating a TV show. However, they said that it's on hold for now. So I'm not super involved in that. And I don't really know what's going on, but they said it's on hold for now, and they're going to try again next season. So, but the TV show would have been around, it's not just about me. It's a law firm of formerly incarcerated attorneys. And it's very highly fiction, it's a fiction thing. So, and my name would have been different, but the managing partner would have been my character, and has my backstory around fighting to the state Supreme Court. So.
Yeah. We have a bunch of women here in Connecticut who were the actual women who served in Danbury with Piper Kerman. So again, highly fictionalized Orange is the New Black, but but certainly relying heavily on their backstories.
So. That's an interesting thing, the opportunity to sort of tell a story. Because I think anything that we can do to sort of allow for people to understand that people going to prison is not the end of their lives, that they come out and they become productive, contributing members to society, and that even when you've done your time, there's still barriers to reentry. There's still things that need to happen in order for you to sort of live as free as you possibly can.
So, Tara, how do people get in touch with you? What's your major project now? What's your website? Give us that information because we only have a few minutes left.
My website is www.civilsurvival.org. Are you talking about my organization's website, or?
You tell us, however you want people to look you up.
Wherever you want people to find you.
You can find me on Instagram and on Twitter and on Facebook under my name, Tara Simmons. Also, you can get my contact information at www.civilsurvival.org or at www.defender.org.
Thank you so much for this, for the opportunity to talk with you, Tara. It really was inspiring, and it's good to know that there's women out there who are fighting that good fight.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not alone. There's lots of us. So and thank you for having me. And
say hi to everyone out there for us. Say hi to Chris Poulos. I know he's out there, and you have a whole you have a group of some freedom fighters out there in Washington, and we're following your every move.
So. Well, thank you so much, Tara, and good luck, and God bless.
All right. God bless you.
You too, Tara.
Well, another show done.
Her story's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
so much so that she optioned the rights to tell it. So for television. So
I think she's the first guest we've ever had that left us speechless.
Yeah, I like these kinds of stories. I
Yeah.
love that there are people out there fighting for the right to sort of to move forward in their lives.
Yeah.
And we need people, I think, working in the field of law who know something about what it means to go to jail.
Yeah.
I think that's a plus.
Amen to that.
I think that's a plus.
Amen.
So before we go, got any updates? Anything you want to share before we say goodbye to Lynn and Andrew?
I mean, we hit the podcast already. That's the big news. That's the big news this week. Again at richroll.com. And Lynn and I, we were about to celebrate our 10th wedding anniversary.
I saw the pictures. I loved them.
Yeah,
they were gorgeous.
So nice.
I love seeing those pictures of when y'all got married, and then
Yeah, nice.
So those were nice. And you're jamming.
And 2 weeks ago, I actually I did the Michael Taylor interview solo without you here. It was my first time.
Oh
ever.
Yes, it was great.
It went. Yeah,
he's an interesting man.
Oh, he's unbelievable.
I've never got a chance to really spend any time with him, so I'm looking forward to.
He wants to have us over. They're having a party in June. So Carles Del Bragg is going to send us an invitation.
Oh, that'd be nice. I'd go.
Yeah,
because he was very interesting, and I enjoyed that. So
yeah, for sure.
All right, thank you, Harry. I'm gonna play us out. We'll be back in another couple of weeks and with another guest. I think we got Louis Reed coming back.
He's coming back. I wasn't here for the first round of Louis Reed, and so much stuff has developed with Reform and Cut 50 and Van Jones. And Van Jones is, he's Van Jones's right hand or a right hand. And on Sunday nights on CNN, Van Jones has his show Redemption, and Louis is traveling all around the country, fighting the good fight too. So we'll have him back.
All right. Well, we will see y'all. Thank you for tuning in for Criminal Justice Insider with Babz, Rawls-Ivy, and Jeff Grant.
Sponsored by
the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven.
Now more than ever. Love you, Babz.
Love you too, Jeff.
Okay, shout out to Andrew Kaplan
and Lynn Springer.
All right.